hidden room behind a wall that was never meant to be discovered. Files stacked with military precision, documents dated the day before he died, and deep inside that basement, something so explosive it made hardened federal agents stop dead in their tracks and immediately call for backup. This is not the story you're told. On the morning of July 24th, 2025, the world lost one of the most iconic human beings to ever step foot inside a wrestling ring. Hulk Hogan, the Immortal, the man who body-slammed Andre the Giant in front of 93,000 screaming fans and convinced an entire nation that one man could truly be larger than life. The official story hit the wires fast and clean. Heart attack, natural causes, a body that had simply given everything and finally quit. 71 years old, decades of punishment, dozens of surgeries. The math added up. The headline wrote itself. But the investigators who walked into that mansion, they didn't see math that added up. They saw a gym that looked completely untouched, a security system deliberately shut off from the inside. A mysterious phone call 3 days earlier that left one of the toughest men in entertainment history visibly shaking and buried beneath the surface of a house the public was never allowed inside, a room that was never supposed to exist, filled with secrets nobody was prepared to find. The FBI does not get called to natural deaths. Remember that when you hear what comes next. The 911 call came in at 9:42 a.m. Cardiac arrest, Clearwater, Florida. A private mansion belonging to Terry Gene Bollea, the man the world knew as Hulk Hogan. Paramedics were there in minutes, working frantically to restart a heart that had powered this legend through 7 decades of chaos, pain, and legendary comebacks. Every effort failed. At 11:17 a.m., doctors at Morton Plant Hospital officially pronounced him dead. The medical examiner's report was quick and definitive: acute myocardial infarction, a heart attack, natural causes. For most people, that was enough. Sad, inevitable. The ending you quietly expected for a man who destroyed his body for our entertainment. Decades in the ring, over 24 major surgeries, a body held together by scar tissue, titanium rods, and pure, unbreakable will. The tributes poured in instantly. Former rivals called him the man who built the stage they all stood on. Dwayne Johnson, John Cena, an entire generation, everyone admitted the same thing. Without Hogan, the industry they dominate today simply wouldn't exist. He took professional wrestling from smoky regional arenas to a global phenomenon on nothing but raw charisma and undeniable presence. To the outside world, the story was over, but to the officers who first stepped through the front door of that Clearwater mansion, the real story was just beginning. Here's what every headline conveniently buried about his health. Yes, he had leukemia. Yes, he had atrial fibrillation. Yes, his spine had been rebuilt so many times the original structure was barely recognizable. All of that is true, and all of it matters. But here's what is also true. In the weeks leading up to his death, Hulk Hogan was seen training harder than ever. People close to him said he looked better than he had in years. His wife, Sky Daly, publicly described his new obsession with clean eating, daily workouts, and meditation. She said he had finally found real peace, not the fake kind for the cameras, the quiet, settled kind of a man who had actually arrived somewhere good. His son, Nick, said his dad was more focused on his health than at any point in his life. Photos from those final weeks showed a man smiling, engaged, alive, not someone quietly fading away. And then there was the surgery. On May 14th, 2025, just 10 weeks before he died, Hogan underwent a 4-level anterior cervical discectomy and fusion, commonly called ACDF. Surgeons went into his cervical spine, removed damaged discs across 4 levels, and fused the vertebrae to take pressure off his nerves. It's one of the most complex spinal procedures you can have, especially at 71 with his medical history. The risks were massive. Medical experts reviewing the case later pointed out one critical detail. The phrenic nerve, the nerve that literally controls your diaphragm and your ability to breathe, runs dangerously close to the surgical field in a multi-level ACDF. If that nerve gets damaged, respiratory failure doesn't always show up right away. It can strike weeks later, without warning.
when the body can no longer compensate for what was quietly destroyed underneath. Sky Daly has already signaled plans to file a major medical malpractice lawsuit. Her claim? That surgery damaged the phrenic nerve, and that damage directly led to the cardiac arrest that killed him. No court has ruled yet, but the theory is medically sound, and it raises a question the simple heart attack headline never answered. Was Hulk Hogan's death the natural end of a hard-lived life, or was it the delayed result of something that went horribly wrong on an operating table 10 weeks earlier, something nobody caught in time? The official cause is still cardiac arrest. Hold that question, because what investigators found inside that mansion raised questions nobody had even thought to ask. When they first entered the mansion, they expected chaos, grief, medication bottles, medical equipment, the usual signs of an elderly man's final decline. What they found instead was something completely different, and the first thing that made them freeze was the gym. Hulk Hogan's gym was his sanctuary, the place he was most himself. Weights he'd used for decades, machines tuned perfectly to his body. Even through surgeries and pain, he always returned to that room. It was who he was. On the morning of July 24th, that gym looked like a showroom floor. Surfaces polished, weights were ranged with perfect geometric precision, not a single scuff on the mats. No water bottles, no towels, zero evidence anyone had been in there recently. For a man supposedly training right up until the end, a gym that spotless doesn't happen by accident. It looked staged. Investigators noticed it immediately. Either Hogan hadn't touched that room in far longer than anyone knew, or someone carefully cleaned it before the 911 call. Both options were disturbing. But the gym was only the beginning. Hulk Hogan took security extremely seriously. His Clearwater mansion had one of the most advanced private security systems money could buy. Multiple camera arrays, full perimeter motion detection, backup systems designed to survive anything. He controlled every single entry, and he almost never made exceptions. Yet, on the morning his body was found, the entire system had been manually disabled. Not a glitch, not a power outage. Someone physically walked to the control panel inside the house and turned everything off, using the exact codes and knowledge needed to do it without triggering a single alert. No signs of forced entry anywhere, no broken windows, no damaged locks, which left investigators with only two possibilities. Either Hogan himself disabled his own security before he died, for reasons nobody can explain, or someone with trusted access made damn sure nothing that happened inside those walls would ever be recorded. Local police took one look at all of this and made a call that tells you everything. They brought in the feds. The FBI does not get deployed to natural deaths. That's not how it works. When a 71-year-old with known heart issues dies at home, local cops handle it. The medical examiner signs off and the file closes. That is not what happened here. Federal teams rolled in with capabilities local police don't even have. Cybercrime specialists, digital forensics experts, smart home surveillance analysts. Their job was crystal clear. Rebuild the exact timeline, figure out who had control of that house in the final hours, and determine whether the official story was the full story. Modern smart homes create mountains of data. Every light switch, every door sensor, every thermostat change leaves a timestamp. Add that to a high-end security network, and you can literally reconstruct every single movement inside the property. Investigators dug through everything. They confirmed the system was disabled from inside the house. What they couldn't find was who actually did it. No outside access. The change was made locally by someone physically present. But the logs didn't name that person. So the investigation widened into communications and into who had access to Hulk Hogan's inner circle. And that's when things got truly disturbing. 3 days before his death, Hulk Hogan received a phone call late at night. His wife, Sky Daly, later told investigators she had never seen him react that way in their entire relationship. Hogan wasn't a man who scared easily. His whole career was built on projecting fearlessness. He had survived public scandals, bankruptcy, a brutal divorce, and depression so dark he admitted it nearly drove him to suicide. He came back from all of it. But after this call, he was pale. He was shaking. He barely spoke about it, and when pressed, he shut down completely. Sky described the look on his face as pure fear. Not stress, not anxiety, fear. When investigators tried to trace the call, what they discovered made it even worse. The number wasn't traceable. It had been routed through servers in multiple countries, a sophisticated technique that takes real expertise and deliberate intent. This was no prank, no wrong number. Someone went to extreme lengths to stay hidden. The FBI looked at every angle: a threat, blackmail, pressure over sensitive information Hogan might have been holding. What they all agreed on? This call was planned, targeted, and whoever made it did not want to be found. The exact words spoken in that call remain classified, but the timing sits in the timeline like a bomb. 3 days before death, a man who had faced the world suddenly looked terrified. Then his security system goes dark. You can draw your own conclusions about what those 3 data points mean when they line up like that. To understand the final chapter, you have to know the public family image was never the full picture. His first marriage to Linda Claridge gave the world Brooke and Nick and the picture-perfect Hogan knows best family. It looked stable. It looked happy. It was not. In 2007, infidelity allegations exploded. Divorce, public war, financial ruin. Hogan later called it the darkest time of his life, so dark he considered ending it. Those scars never fully healed. A second marriage to Jennifer McDaniel lasted 10 years before ending quietly in 2021. Then came Sky Daly, a yoga instructor he married in 2023 after a fast courtship that raised eyebrows. Those close to him said she brought him real peace and stability. He called her his anchor. But not everyone was on board. His daughter, Brooke, didn't attend the wedding. The distance had grown for years, made worse by scandals, including that leaked tape that humiliated her publicly. Their once televised father-daughter bond had become painfully private. Then came the will. Before he died, Hogan completely removed Brooke from his estate. Nick became the sole beneficiary of a nearly $5 million fortune. Everything went to one child, the other got nothing. Investigators took note. Inheritance fights don't automatically prove motive, but they paint a very clear map of a family that had been breaking for years and had finally made that break permanent in legal stone. The FBI noticed. In a case where every detail was being weighed, erasing one child from a multi-million-dollar estate is not something you overlook. Then, during the second forensic sweep of the mansion, everything changed. Behind what looked like an ordinary basement wall, no seams, no handles, nothing, federal agents found a room that wasn't on any blueprint, wasn't in any property record, and had been hidden so perfectly it had stayed invisible for years. The room was organized with eerie precision. Files in perfect sequence, documents categorized and dated, medical records, financial papers, private communications with people who never appeared in Hogan's public life. But the detail that stopped every single investigator cold was this. Some of those documents were dated the day before he died. That means the room had been accessed in the final 24 hours of his life. Someone, almost certainly Hogan himself, had been in there right at the end, not packing things away, but reading, reviewing, maybe even adding to the collection. What was in those files? The FBI still won't say. Leaks suggest some documents involved sensitive communications and relationships that completely contradicted the quiet, retired wrestler narrative. There are persistent whispers of leverage material, information someone else would desperately want, or desperately want destroyed. The FBI has stayed almost completely silent about the contents. Their only statement? Investigation ongoing. No final ruling on foul play. That silence is deafening. In an age where classified documents leak in hours, the total blackout around this room is unheard of. Former FBI analysts who've seen the public details say the same thing. You don't lock down information this tightly when you've found nothing. You lock it down when what you've found still matters, when releasing it would cause consequences someone in power has decided to prevent. What could possibly be in those files that required a secret room and a federal blackout? That is the question nobody has answered. That is the question the investigation refuses to close. And that question changes the entire story you just heard. Let's be precise because this story deserves it. Confirmed facts. Hulk Hogan died July 24th, 2025. Medical examiner ruled heart attack consistent with his health history. Major spinal surgery 10 weeks earlier. Security system deliberately disabled. FBI brought in. Hidden room discovered. Investigation still open. Unconfirmed but heavily reported, the untraceable phone call 3 days prior, possible phrenic nerve damage from the May surgery, and the explosive contents of those basement files. The question still hanging: who disabled the security? What was said in that call? What was Hogan doing in that room the day before he died? Was the surgery negligence, accident, or something else? Sky Daily's malpractice lawsuit, if it moves forward, could finally force some answers into the open. Court filings have a way of cracking open what federal investigations try to keep sealed. That process is still active. Here is what is beyond dispute and beyond any shadow these questions cast. Hulk Hogan changed professional wrestling forever. He didn't just ride the wave, he was the wave. In the 1980s, he turned wrestling into mainstream American culture, appointment television, global merchandise empire, the blueprint every superstar since has been measured against. His WrestleMania 3 body slam on Andre the Giant remains one of the most watched moments in sports entertainment history. 93,000 people roaring as a man did the impossible. In Clearwater, murals of him still cover walls. Fans still leave flowers and childhood memories. He didn't just pass through that town, he became part of its soul. That legacy is real. It is permanent. Nothing an investigation finds can erase it. But Hulk Hogan was also a man carrying invisible weight in his final years, a body rebuilt by scalpels, a family fractured by scandal and silence, a marriage to a woman who truly loved him while he carried secrets he would never fully share. And somewhere in the basement of that Clearwater mansion, a hidden room he accessed one last time in the final 24 hours of his life. Records inside dated the day before he died. What was he doing in there? What was he protecting? What was he terrified of losing? What did that phone call 3 days earlier warn him was coming? The official story is simple: heart attack, natural causes. A 71-year-old body that had been pushed beyond human limits finally gave out. Maybe that's it. Maybe the surgery created invisible damage that turned into a silent countdown. Maybe Sky Daily's malpractice lawsuit will prove the operating table in May led straight to the mansion in July. Maybe that phone call was empty noise. Maybe Hogan disabled his own security for some innocent reason. Maybe the hidden room was just a private diary, nothing sinister. Maybe everything adds up to nothing more than the complicated, painful, private ending of a man who lived his life in the spotlight and died in the silence he built around himself. But here is what you cannot explain away. The FBI does not show up for natural deaths. They don't send cybercrime units and digital forensics teams because a 71-year-old had a heart attack. They don't maintain total information lockdown around a basement room for months unless what they found still matters right now. Something in that house demanded federal involvement. Something in those files demanded silence that has now lost it months. What that something is, we still don't know. The investigation remains open. The lawsuit is pending. The files are still being reviewed by people who refuse to speak. Was it simply time catching up with a body that gave everything? Was it a surgery that went wrong and a medical system that failed to notice? Or was it the consequence of something Hulk Hogan knew? Something he kept hidden in a room nobody was supposed to find? Something that phone call 3 days before his death told him was finally caught up with him? The truth is still inside that mansion, still inside those files, still behind the wall of silence that has kept the public in the dark while the months keep passing. Hulk Hogan spent his entire career playing a man who could never be defeated.
In the end, something defeated him. We just don't know yet whether it was time, a scalpel, or something entirely. And until that investigation finally closes, until those files see daylight, until someone in that federal building decides the public deserves the full truth, that question remains wide open. Drop your theory in the comments right now because this story is far from over. And when the next bombshell breaks, you're going to want to be here.